So, Adriana, thank you so much for taking the time today to be a part of our community of practice channel here on YouTube. And on behalf of SETI, I want to thank you so much for your leadership today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. So, as always, we begin by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, if you can please do us the honors by introducing yourself to our listeners and viewers, tell us about your amazing work.
Yeah, absolutely. And just following and echoing that, I also want to recognize that we are on the land of Lanai Lape people, temporarily known as Philadelphia, and working very intentionally to collectivize ownership and return it to the hands of the folks who have lived here historically. I'm Adriana. I'm the executive director of the Kensington Corridor Trust. Our work in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the United States has been really focused on collective ownership and decommodification of land. What would it look like for a neighborhood to directly own, govern, and control their own real estate in the face of traditional speculation, traditional capitalism, traditional real estate finance? We've been around for a little bit over 5 years, and in that time, we have decommodified 31 properties on Kensington Avenue, which is one of the primary commercial corridors in our neighborhood, and we placed them in trust for the neighborhood to directly own, govern, and control. Our work is an anti-displacement model, working again very intentionally to just make sure the folks who have lived here historically can continue to do so into the future in an affordable way and under collective ownership.
Wow, then you're really verifying to me that Toronto, at least Toronto, is very twinish to parts of America because we also have an area called Kensington Market. If you Google that, you'll see that it's very similar to what you're saying because they were trying to bring big box stores there like Walmart, and it's a very cultural area. It's a very you have Chinatown right around the corner, but that little hub is very historic. And they want to keep it that way. They want to keep it very communal and mom and pop stores. They don't want big box stores there. So that's amazing how it's literally named the same thing. That's awesome. So what inspires you about the work you do?
Yeah, and I'll just kind of take that thread and say I think the thing that inspires me every day are the folks that live here and the folks who have continued to choose to make Kensington home, who have chosen to continue to have their small businesses here. This is a neighborhood that has seen massive disinvestment and has been victim to many systemic policy issues like redlining, like deindustrialization, like white flight that have just left this neighborhood in a state of extreme vacancy, really high crime, really large unhoused population, a really large actively utilizing population, very active drug trade, sex trade. And it has made it also prime for gentrification because as the real estate values have depressed and we have proximity to center city through public transit, we have an elevated train that's directly over our corridor, which folks affectionately call the L. That train makes it accessible to get into center city in almost no time. And so to follow the train and follow the gentrification has been the story of Kensington. And so our work has been to really make sure that as that is happening and as folks are actively being displaced from this neighborhood as a result of gentrification, that we are able to preserve some spaces for affordability, preserve some spaces for not just affordable housing, but also permanently affordable commercial spaces as well, so that we can have those mom and pop shops, so that we can have those locally owned businesses. And again, because our neighborhood is predominantly Black and Brown, making sure that we are also preserving arts and culture and history for this neighborhood, for the people that have been here, and for the generations that are yet to come.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can concur with that same area too. Very culturally diverse, very fluid in community, and we have a train. We have like what we call a streetcar and an underground train that runs right, not in the middle, but I would suggest around the hub area as well as city bus. So and there is same, when we're dealing with crime, when we're dealing with, narcotics and those things like that. So wow. This is awesome. So on the flip side now, like what challenges or barriers have you faced in your work and how have you overcome them or in the process of overcoming them?
Yeah, this work isn't without significant challenge, right? Traditional capitalism really is rooted in individual ownership, right? So I buy a house, that's my house for my family, I build my wealth. And then one day, I may sell it and I choose what happens with the funds that I receive from that transaction or from that sale. Collective ownership is a historic practice, right? It's an ancestral practice to say that we will own something in community and that we will make decisions in the collective for the collective benefit. And so it's going against what has been standardized, right? It's going against what people have been socialized or normalized to understand, particularly about real estate and land. And that's hard work, right? To push people to think outside of the context of what they've known and to ask folks to build consensus and to self govern and self determine and identify for themselves without outside intervention what they want for their future. So that's been a challenge, just the educational aspect of it, as well as the legal infrastructure for it, financing mechanisms to make this possible, because we are producing permanently affordable housing and commercial spaces that are collectively owned perpetually. And so, what does it look like to finance that into the future and to build the right capital stack that would allow us to do that in a way that is sustainable, but still allows for neighborhood wealth building, right? Still allows for that recapture of wealth that can be redistributed. Additional challenges, I would say, building out neighborhood governance. A lot of the folks who have been a part of our governance have never served on a board before, have never been a part of any type of entity where they've had fiduciary responsibility or governing responsibility over collectively held assets, and particularly a portfolio of the size that is worth a couple $1 million at this point and continuing to grow in scale and size every day. And so that has been a challenge, just the education around real estate finance and what does it look like to produce housing? How do you attract small business owners to a corridor that has had extremely high vacancy for decades? So that's been hard work. And then I would say the last challenge that we face and that we continue to face is just attracting the right type of capital to this work, right? So once we determined what that capital stack needed to look like, then finding that type of capital, I think, has been really challenging. We've gotten better at it over the years, and I think we've strengthened our proof of concept. And we are now an organization that is seen as viable and sustainable and a model that can be replicated. But going to funders and asking them to produce significantly below interest rate returns and significantly more patient capital is an ongoing challenge.
Definitely. I hear you on that for sure. And so, anything new or anything that you'd like the audience to know that you're working on at this time?
Yes, our organization is currently working on replicating the community stewardship trust model, CST, which is a model that's currently based out in Atlanta. They're the first in the country. We will be the second in the country once we replicate in 2026. And what it would allow for us to do is provide direct distributions of the returns to the residents. So it would take us from collective wealth building to also having an individual and independent wealth building element, which is really critical when you're talking about a neighborhood where the average household median income is $26,000 per year, right? And so having additional dividends to give out to folks can be really game changing for their household finances. And so that's a model that we're very actively replicating now and excited to bring to the forefront of our work and of this ecosystem of collective ownership.
Again, very, very similar. We also have an area called Little Jamaica in Toronto here, and it it has definitely gone through trials and tribulations, and now similar gentrification, putting a streetcar right, in the middle of it that took like I literally want to say a decade, which caused our local shops to fall, to close, to because of all the construction that they took forever to finish. But to me, I'm speaking me, not Setsi, that I feel that it was purposely done to in order for these businesses to have to close down. And these are you know Black and brown majority, Caribbean based businesses that were flourishing and were doing very well. And then here comes, now finally they have this streetcar there, but there's hints of gentrification coming in, quote unquote, affordable housing, condos being raised. area is looking a little different. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah, signaling some early gentrification or mid-bloom gentrification. And yeah, that, and I think similarly here, folks, right, are seeing some of that activity, right? What does it look like when a building goes under construction, when something takes longer than it's supposed to, when sidewalk repairs are happening, or there's a street closure? All of that causes significant harm, particularly to the mom and pop shop businesses who are dependent on that daily revenue stream in order to make their business model work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow, this is awesome. So let me ask you, how do you feel about the future of social impact in general?
It's bright. I think it's bright. I think there's a new wave of folks who are starting to see how they can unlock some of their own wealth into social impact spaces and think about not just financial returns, but social returns. And KCT, the Kensington Corridor Trust, our work in Philly has been deeply dependent upon some of those investors, some of those folks who are seeing the value in investing for the long term, acknowledging that systems change is gradual, right? We didn't get here overnight. We can't get out of it overnight. This is long work. And I think another thing specifically to folks who are in the social impact space is they're starting to be in community and dialogue with each other, right? So we're seeing more and more conferences spur and spark where folks are in dialogue with one another, not just thinking about the different deals that they're a part of or the different transactions they're engaging in, but also just the sector and the ecosystem, and having education for those folks around what it looks like to move capital in a way that is reparative and restorative rather than rooted in traditional capitalism and returns.
Yes, exactly. I definitely feel the same. And, I mean, we're dealing with new generations coming in, Gen Zs here and then beyond, right? So they're holding us accountable for a lot of the things that have happened, the redlining, or all these things that were happening over a period of time. Well, now this generation is like, what bags are you leaving us with that we have to now carry? What torch are you leaving that we have to now carry? But it's just so refreshing, people like yourself and Setsia, that we're just kind of laying a foundation, just being that voice, to say, hey, this is what's going on. We need to put pen to paper. We need to have action involved in order for us to have a better future for our generations that are here and to come. So most definitely. So wow, Adriana, this has been very powerful. If I was to ask you, what does success look like to you, what would you say?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say success looks like a couple of different things. One, it's collective control and ownership of the land, right? Really being able to decommodify as much as we possibly can and place it into community control and into perpetual ownership for the community to control. I think it's success. I think being able to sustain neighborhood level governance where everybody that's governing either lives here or has a small business here. They're not dependent on outsiders. They don't need anyone to inform their decision making. They have the resources that they need and the capacity required to govern and uphold that fiduciary responsibility into the future, I think is success. And then I would say, if I was thinking at a macro level, it's the ecosystem, right? That more folks across the world are thinking about this ancestral practice of collective ownership, right? That we're bringing back this rooted system and infrastructure for making collective decisions around land, right? We don't have to hold it or own it independently. That's a choice. That's a choice that we wake up and make every day. And so, what does it look like to flip that choice on its head and say, you know what, I'm good to own this with my neighbor, right? Like, I want them to thrive in the way that I thrive, or I want to move in conjunction with those around me. I think that's a beautiful thing. And that's the work that we wake up to do here every day.
That is absolutely amazing. Very hopeful, and we're just a line away. And I know Trump's trying to join us together and hey, whatever, But guess what? We're all the same human beings. We have the same issues. We're just, and really on the same landmass. So it's really about collective effort and how we can really right some of the wrongs that have been done based off of racism and isms. We really gotta really close that and really move beyond it if we want to progress as a human species. So this has been so powerful. If I can ask you, the last question is your closing thoughts and calls to actions as we close.
Yeah, and thank you for creating that space. I would say calls to action, get informed around collective ownership, right? Like, seek out the folks closest to you who are thinking about alternative forms of ownership that aren't rooted in traditional systems or what we've defined as traditional systems. And then I would also just encourage folks to really activate in their own community. Place-based work is what advances all of us, right? When we are working with those who are closest to us and with whom we hold proximity in lived experience, we're so much stronger for it, right? Rather than trying to reach out across and find some distant whatever. It's the people right next door to you who you could have the most impact on, and they'll have the most impact on you.
Absolutely. So, Adriana, we thank you so much on behalf of SETI and me myself. I learned a lot. I feel so inspired, and we're definitely going to collab. Like, as soon as I got off the phone, I'm going to tell Victor that we need to book a meeting with like you and the Little Jamaica, because they also a trust as well, and also even Kensington. I don't, well, let's see what we can do, But this is
Yeah,
what's
I'd love
needed.
that.
Yeah, this is
Absolutely.
what's
Yeah,
needed.
we have to be in conversation with each other and continue to learn from each other. I'm not
Yes.
the bearer of all knowledge, right? Like I'm constantly learning and we're evolving our model all the time as well. And so would love to do that.
Right.
Would love to have that as a follow-up from this.
Awesome, awesome. So we will close the way that we began by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Adriana, this is not a goodbye. This is a see you later. And we thank you so much for your time, your leadership. We wish you nothing but much success, much mental health, physical health. And yes, we will definitely collaborate.
Thank you so much. Same to you. And this is a talk soon.
Yes, that's it. Thanks again.
Take care. Of course, you too.
Okay. All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.